What's up, photo freaks? I'm Matt DeConti. Welcome to episode 9. Today we're going to talk about composition. Pretty excited. Got our new merch on, new logo. Pretty pumped. Yeah, it's the small things. So we're shooting today from the location, or at least one of the locations from the movie Clueless. Behind me is the witch's house, which is, no pun intended, extremely cool. That thing actually looks like a real witch's house, which is more surprising that they would use it in the cult classic Clueless, because it's about a high school romance type thing. But awesome, love it. Funny movie, stars Alicia Silverstone and Paul Rudd. Check it out if you haven't seen it. Okay, so today, composition. Composition is what makes up your picture, what makes it interesting, all the things that you include, all the creativity, different angles, stuff like that. So we're going to go over that. The first thing in composition is rule of thirds, and you use rule of thirds to align your, it's like a tic-tac-toe grid on your picture, and you're going to want to put your subject where the lines intersect. And I'll go ahead and show you a couple pictures right now where that comes into play. Okay, so composition, rule of thirds. Here we go. The first picture I'm looking at here is a picture of a cat on a tree stump. Beautiful picture. The cat is right on the intersecting line, following the rule of thirds, which fairly simple, subject on the intersecting line. What I would encourage you to do is find a picture or two of your own where the subject, your subject, is not on the intersecting lines, and see how natural it feels to look at it, and how pleasing it is on the eyes. And then take it and put it in a Photoshop if you have Photoshop, and crop it out so that way the subject is on one of those intersecting lines. That way you are following the rule of thirds, and see how much easier it is and pleasing it is on the eyes. It just has a kind of a cool natural feeling that makes it feel more like a professional picture. The next photo is this one. I like a lot. This one's really sweet. The two snakes. There's a bit of contrast in there too, but in this shot, you almost get all four intersecting lines of the grid, of the rule of thirds grid, to touch the subjects. So great use of that. There's so many different good qualities about this picture, that so much good composition, and it just makes it feel balanced and natural. Beautiful shot, but the main thing we're looking at here is the rule of thirds. They are on the intersecting lines, and both beautiful pictures. Try it out, push pause, go try a couple of your own pictures, try it with and without being on the intersecting lines, and see what you think. All right, on to the next one. Okay, now you want to remember another thing, which is using natural lines. You use natural lines to guide the eyes. When somebody's looking at a picture, when you're looking at a picture, you have to remember you're telling a story. So you can use these lines that your environment provides you. I'll go ahead and show you a couple of pictures where your natural lines are helping you tell the story. Okay, so natural lines or leading lines. These two pictures here are awesome. The first one I'm looking at is a guy walking along with an umbrella beside the railroad tracks. And you have to remember your pictures are telling a story, and natural lines are what lead us through that story. So the first thing I think of is, what's this photographer trying to tell us? What story is it? And all the lines, you could just see they're pointing right to this guy's face, from the railroad tracks to the shore, or it looks like a shore or a lake area. In the story I'm seeing is, if you're going from left to right, because it's natural for us to read left to right, is these people look miserable. Like the people on the tracks, they're barefoot, it's wet, that can't be comfortable to walk on. And the weather's bad. But then as you go further along, looking past the gravel and the tracks, it leads you right to this guy, in which I think the photographer is trying to tell us is this guy is happy. He's smiling. He's got like colorful clothes on. He's got a scarf. I mean, everything in the world would lead you to believe that he's feeling good. I don't know if it's because he's walking on the grass, not the rocks, but these leading lines lead you to that story of like, man, why is this guy so happy? He's just looks like he's loving every minute of it. So that would be that picture. Follow the lines, use leading lines. And then you go into the next one. This one here, a really cool spider web, which is, I think the lack of the subject is the missing spider, but the lines lead you kind of almost anticipating like, oh, these are going to lead to a spider, even if it's just for a split second. And then as you follow the lines to the center of the spider web, which is off to the right, you see there's no spider. Where the heck's the spider? Maybe because it's raining, who knows? But these lines kind of give you that feeling of anticipation, like there should be a spider there, or even just the thought of like there was a spider there. So here's two really good examples of natural lines, or leading lines, as you otherwise might call them, that will help you tell the story. Now you have using frames, natural frames, in your picture. So you can do frames within frames. You might actually have some doors lined up or some windows, and you can use those as tools to make your picture more interesting. Frames within a frame, doors, anything like that, doorways, definitely are all part of composition and can be used to make great pictures. I'll show you a couple of photographs of that. Okay, so natural frames, fairly self-explanatory. Just finding some sort of natural frame to put your picture in. This example right here of the leaves, I think they're probably out in some wooded area, just looking in on the crops, whatever they're growing. And it just looks cool. Anytime you have the opportunity to get some sort of a cool natural frame, it just does nothing but add to your picture. So a beautiful way to make your photograph interesting, and it doesn't come around that often. So when you get a chance, see if you can get it. And it also, like, knowing this makes you go back on some of your pictures and ask yourself, hey, maybe I have some sort of natural frames in my pictures I didn't even realize. So check it out and try and have fun and experiment with this. See if you can get some other shots with natural frames. Another one you can use is contrast. You can contrast your subject and your background. Two things that create some sort of, contrast that makes that picture interesting. And for an example of what that would look like, I'll show you some pictures. Okay, so next we have contrast. On this picture here, it's a pretty good example of how you have the subject and there's that significant contrast between everything in the background. It's kind of like, even like with what you might see behind the grill of this car. So it's not like what you would consider your high contrast in Photoshop. This is just like contrasting images. So the background, you could tell there's some sort of tires. It doesn't necessarily also mean like a depth of field. Like there could be a person standing pretty close by, and because of that focus on this on the subject, because of where the subject is, and you have that dark, and you got the tires in the back, that creates a contrast, which makes you almost kind of like you got that focus on the subject, but you look back and then there's something else to look at, which that's kind of what your contrast is. So it's the contrast between two different images in your picture, between the subject, the background, but yet the depth of field isn't too blurred, so you're able to make out what that background is. So there's your contrast right there. There's a lot of images that have pretty good contrast. I did like this one the most. I love black and white, so that's why I chose this one. Another one I use, which is perfect for beginners, that will, I think, always help you in your pictures, is filling the frame. You want to fill the frame and not have a bunch of dead space, unless it's like a landscape by design, but otherwise fill that frame. When you're not taking a good picture, get closer to your subject. If your picture's not coming out good, always remember, get closer. You want to fill that frame up. Here are a couple examples of that. Okay, so next is filling the frame. One of the simplest rules and tricks that you can use in composition to give yourself an amazing shot is filling the frame. So what you want to do in the first picture is this peacock that just looks amazing. But you could have had a peacock with just kind of a plain background, or some other random animals walking around, or even like, I don't know, it could have been at a zoo and where somebody's like cleaning up in the background that really takes away from the shot. Or there could have been some negative space, just like kind of empty, just something that's meaningless to what story you're trying to convey here. And instead, by filling the space, or getting closer to your subject, you have this gorgeous bird that actually, it looks almost prestigious. I mean, that bird is awesome. My sister would love this. She loves peacocks. But you got your patterns in there. You got an interruption of patterns. Beautiful, beautiful shot. Filling the space, just did everything for this picture. I love it. The next one you have is strawberries, which, oh my God, I'm dying for strawberry pie right now. So I love it. This could have been just some random shot of these strawberries in a basket, or among a bunch of different types of fruit, or something at a farmer's market, or some random people. Who knows? But filling in the space, filling in your frame, getting closer to the shot, that looks awesome. I mean, unless you really hate strawberries, who's going to look at this and not want to go get some strawberries? It just screams like fresh, good, just amazing fruit. So, that can do everything for your picture. What I would recommend too is going back and looking at some of your pictures that you might have deleted, some of your photos, or some you think might be kind of like, and then crop them, fill the frame with your subject, get in closer, and I bet you some of those pictures are going to be more than salvageable and might even turn out to be great photographs. So fill in the space, fill in the frame, whatever you want to call it. Get closer to your subject, all of that. So it's an awesome suggestion, and definitely a part of composition. The next one that I recommend is center the dominant eye. When you are taking pictures and people are involved, you want to get that dominant eye centered. So that way it gives the impression that the subject is following you wherever you go, that they're looking at you. And it adds to that connection. Here's an example of centering the dominant eye. Okay, centering the dominant eye. This one is pretty powerful. So these two pictures I'm looking at, the first one is this girl, gorgeous eyes, but just because that is centered, that dominant eye. Good God, if I don't feel guilty just looking at her, it's like she's peering into my soul. It just does so much for that picture. Like wherever I go, like if I'm leaning left, leaning right, it just follows you, man. It's like that story is like, what did you do to me? Who are you? You're freaking me out. I mean, you just feel that emotion. Centering that dominant eye just lets that subject, if you're looking at that photograph, they're following you. It's just, it pulls you in. So, and then you go to the next one. It's the same thing. This guy, it's got that cool vibe, mysterious, like wherever you go, he's just going to follow you. Love the picture. If you had it to where it's centered, like that lines were going right down his nose, yeah, you would have symmetry, which is okay, but it just does something completely different to the picture and adds that extra element of like them just looking at you like you're connected with your subject as opposed to just a regular picture. So centering the dominant eye, use it. And again, try mixing it up on Photoshop if you can crop it. And it's pretty awesome. Very cool tool.
Another one is use patterns and repetitions. You can use patterns and repetitions to create some gorgeous pictures. Whether you could be out in the middle of a cornfield, just spill a bunch of jelly beans on the table. There's so many ways that life provides you with patterns and repetitions that you don't have to always create it yourself. But you can definitely get creative with it, as well as find it as life presents it. So here are some examples of patterns and repetitions.
Okay, so we have patterns and repetition. First picture I'm looking at is the lily pads. Very cool, beautiful color. It just goes to show you how awesome patterns can be. It doesn't always have to be like, I don't know, like a checkerboard type of thing. It can be any shape or size, and it doesn't have to be exact. But you have the general pattern here of the lily pads. Beautiful shot, and even though there's a little bit of space in between, it doesn't matter because you have that overall pattern. That just makes for a great photograph. The next one is a zebra, and another example of how the pattern doesn't have to be exact, but it's beautiful. You get the general pattern and the black and white. It's just, this is one of the easier types of composition that you can get. It's just finding that pattern and getting that right shot. This one happens to have some symmetry to it, but beautiful shot. Patterns, very, very cool, and go out and practice.
The next is interrupt patterns and repetitions. Throw something in the middle of it. You could basically do anything like the cornfield I mentioned. You might have a child in the middle of it. Or I remember at a wedding once I had a bunch of the white chairs just all lined up in that perfect pattern. And I saw a chair that was actually black, and I put that right in the middle of it. And it created that great contrast because I interrupted the pattern and the repetition. And that's what actually made the picture very interesting. Here's an example or two of interrupting patterns and repetitions.
Okay, so interrupting patterns and repetition. One of my favorites. Love this. So let's get right to it. The first shot I'm looking at is an M&M, a green M&M in the middle of some coffee beans. What better way to lead the eye or to get you focused on the subject than totally interrupting a pattern with something that has huge contrast? Instantly, I'm looking at the M&M, and then I go to the coffee beans. It just it looks cool. I love this type of thing. So you can have fun experimenting with this one. There's so many different options that you can have. The next one, it's a bunch of carriages, and I think they are, I think they're nurses. But this one is so cool because not only when you're interrupting the pattern just does it look cool, but it just has some sort of a like an abstract feel to it. And the photographer, he did a great job with the use of lines and contrast because of the colors. Very, very cool. So interrupting a pattern, awesome. And can make some, like, seriously, some very, very good artwork. So go experiment and look for some patterns, and you can actually create the interruption yourself and make something that's ordinary into some pretty cool art.
Angles. That is definitely another one. You might be out at, say, the Grand Canyon, and there's a bunch of people and they're all shooting the same thing. Just something that your mom would shoot with a cell phone. Straight on. Shoot different angles. Shoot things that people are not shooting. In fact, what I do is when I see a bunch of people taking a shot, I try to do the exact opposite. So using different angles creates some awesome shots. There might be some that are like, you're like, I don't even know what that is. But among that, there will definitely be some different interesting ones. So shoot angles.
So angles is next. Taking different angles. All right, so there are a couple of my shots that I'm going to use for this one. So the first one that I'm looking at is a wedding client, a bride. Beautiful bride, but straight on, your typical selfie or something that your mom would take. Just doesn't do it justice. Does not do your client justice, doesn't do your art justice. Try different angles. Do everything but what anybody else would do. So I think just the way that that I caught this one, I'm pretty proud of just the way she's looking down, and it makes you, or at least makes me kind of wonder what she's thinking, if she's nervous. It's just a short amount of time before the wedding. And yet in that element, it captures her beauty in just the simplest form. She doesn't have to pose. She doesn't have to smile. It's just raw beauty, and captures it without her even knowing. The next one, love this shot. It's of a fitness champion. It captures, just the different angle captures her seriousness, the beauty of her hair, the colors, and just, you could tell, like, the seriousness, how intense she is. It almost makes you feel like how intense she would be training and getting ready for competition just with that look. Again, a straight on angle just wouldn't do justice. This one captures the colors and the light. I like them. I hope you guys like them. But different angles, obviously, not only for portraits. You can use different angles with all different kinds of shots. But I just thought I'd throw these two in there because they're two of my favorite shots, and two beautiful people, great subjects. And try different angles.
Okay, so next we have shooting through something. So you might shoot through a window or a doorway, or you might have something that's blocking the subject or just to the side of it, and you can shoot through it to kind of give you that voyeur type of shot. It creates a whole different type of feel to it, a little bit of a mystery, and creates a very cool effect to it. So shoot through something, and here are examples of that.
Okay, so shooting through something. I gotta be honest with you guys. There's a lot of room for photographers to go shoot through things, because I went looking through the internet just to find a picture, and there's not a lot on there. So I know I don't have a lot where I'm shooting through things, but as you can tell, it's kind of like the foreground is blurred, and it's like a voyeur type of a shot. So, but don't go getting yourself in trouble with this one. But yeah, it's a pretty cool shot. I guess I'm guilty of not having enough of these. Maybe I should go practice a little. But if you got some cool shots, send them, post it. I'd love to see it. Give us all some different ideas. So that's pretty much it for this one. Shooting through something. Cool composition though.
Another one is symmetry. So you want to try symmetry. That is where you have everything symmetrical and completely even, like if you're shooting facing a church and dead center with the main doors entering the church is right in the center and everything is completely balanced. Maybe straight up a road that leads to the desert where there's like a vanishing point where everything's completely symmetrical. There's a bunch of different examples of that. So rather than me ramble on about it, I'll show you some examples of symmetry.
Symmetry. Okay, so very simple. You just want everything balanced, left and right side, almost like a mirror image when you're looking at symmetry, basic symmetry. So like right here in this picture, this bridge, it looks very, very symmetrical, very even, very balanced, and makes a beautiful shot. So symmetry, although not always the most exciting type of composition, can be very, very nice, and you can get some beautiful shots from this. So symmetry, pretty easy.
Another one is shallow depth of fields. This is a very basic one using aperture, where you're going to make everything in the background. You're going to have your lowest aperture, and we'll go into more detail about aperture in another video. But create a shallow depth of field. That's really, really good composition, very popular, and creates beautiful shots, especially like with portraits. Here are some examples of shallow depth of field.
Okay, so now we are on shallow depth of field. It's easy and a very useful form of composition. On this first picture, I have a minimal shallow depth of field. I love this picture. It's one of my favorites. It's one I took personally. And you could tell in the background, the waves are just, it's very shallow. The other crossing sign, railroad crossing, is shallow. But that being said, it can be more shallow. But I wanted to kind of keep that so that we can kind of tell it's not totally blurred out. So you can use a slight shallow depth of field. That's what I did on this one. And then you have the next image, a picture I took of a cat at an animal shelter, and I used a greater shallow depth of field. So just catching those eyes by making everything with such a shallow depth of field, by using that, you just catch that the cat is either mischievous. In this case, that cat would not look up for nothing. It had its eyes buried, no matter how much I tried to get its attention. And finally, I think after 5 minutes of standing on a countertop, it looked up, and I caught it. And that moment that you catch that look in the cat's eyes, if I would have had a not just everything clear and sharp, and I chose not to, it would have been far less of an impact, is what I'm trying to say, of a shot. But because I had a shallow depth of field, your focus is on the eyes and just kind of the what kind of a cat that is, or what the cat's experiencing, to make it kind of hide its nose. And what is it thinking looking at you? It's going to claw your eyes out or something. So shallow depth of field is really cool, really useful in putting the focus on your subject. You can get some really, really beautiful shots like this. And it doesn't always have to be the maximum amount of a shallow depth of field. You can do slight amount of it and still get some really cool shots, like in the railroad crossing signs. So shallow depth of field for composition.
And the last one I'm going to recommend is flip the photo. Remember, the photos are telling a story, so flipping the photo can actually help you break the rules of photography, because I know there are rules that you're supposed to follow, especially you'll hear them in school, but there are certain things that will help you break rules. Flipping the photo is one. I had a picture of a flower girl, and she was sitting there tying her shoes, and the contrast between the light and the dark was cool, but what I did was, because there was a light coming in through the window, I switched it, because the way that it tells the story in the original picture, the dark is where it started. Everything was dark on the left. What I did was I flipped the photo, so the light is where the story starts, where you can see the girl putting on the shoe, and then it leads to the dark, which was really, really a beautiful shot. It was a black and white photo, and I'll put that up so you guys can check that out. But flipping the photo, that would be my last one, and here's a couple of shots of that.
Okay, so flipping the photo. This is an interesting one, because flipping the photo, you can use this to actually break the rules that you're taught in school of composition. It's just another way to, it is a form of composition, but you're breaking the traditional rules. So, for example, the first photo I'm looking at is a little girl. It was a flower girl. I took this picture before a wedding. And originally, the photo was flipped where the dark was coming first. And for me, I like to tell the story kind of like reading the book, where, or in a movie, when something fades to black, that's usually when the movie's ending. So I associate that with telling the story. And so I flipped the image to make the light come first, which that light leads me into the girl's first shoe, and towards the center of the picture, where she is actually pulling the laces of her shoe or slipper to tighten it. And then it kind of leads me up into her head, kind of looking down, which is the story. And then that leads to the black, to the darker colors, which is kind of fading out. So, breaking the rules, but it actually works. And the other picture, it's the same thing. I didn't want to start with the bride, the blackness. You in this circumstance, the face first. So you don't want to go back of the head first, and then all of a sudden you're reading the nose backwards. It's the shape of the face first that lead you into the back of the head. So we have that light starting from left to right that leads you into the hand, holding the stem of her lip liner that leads you up into her lips and to her silhouette. And so by flipping the image, I was able to do that. The other way around, it's just black that kind of leads you. It's more of an uncomfortable, less natural flow. Flip the picture and see if you can get a very natural flow that way, and don't necessarily worry about breaking the rules, because if it feels right and it feels easy on your eyes and comfortable and natural, that's the way to go. So flip the photo.
All right, so that's it today for this episode of Photo Freaks, where we hope you enjoyed the episode on composition. Those are my ideas of composition. Please go ahead and let us know what ideas you have for composition, because there are too many to put out here, but those are the basics, what I feel are important, and that hopefully will help you make more creative shots and get you thinking of different ideas that separate you from just a standard picture. Thank you for watching, Photo Freaks. We appreciate it. Let us know how we're doing. Yeah, subscribe. hit the like button. Hope you enjoy the location. Anyways, also, yeah, if you have any ideas for other locations, let us know. Remember, we're just having fun. We're trying to make this interesting, so it's not just like watching some boring tutorial that makes you feel like you're in a classroom where I just want to like choke myself, because that's no fun. I might as well go to school for that. Give us your ideas and your thoughts. And yeah, thanks for watching, you guys. Peace.